What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tierfon Orbital. So today's demo video is going to be a little bit different in that we are not talking about a lightsaber. Hopefully the YouTube algorithm does not flag this video because we are going to be talking about a replica blaster. This is Jin Erso's blaster from Rogue One, of course. It is based on a Luger, P08 Luger. So I want to come into Fusion. We will talk a little bit about the chassis system that I designed for this install. So one of the things that I wanted to do when doing this build was to make a removable magazine chassis. I've done a couple of these now. They are very, very labor intensive to do these. They're not easy. They take probably, I think these are the longest builds for me. And I'm not even building the hilt, right? So this is based on an Armorer Works airsoft gun, which is, by the way, Armorer Works makes some really, really fantastic airsoft guns and airsoft replicas, right? And this one is sold as a kit. It's a Luger base, and then they also include this barrel as well as these side greeblies. They include that all in the kit to make it look like Jin's blaster from Rogue One, right? So it's a fantastic replica to begin with. I mean, it is heavy, full metal and steel. It feels like a real weapon, right? It's got a removable magazine, all working parts. The slide works. So it's just a really, really great feeling replica prop to begin with without even installing it. There's not a lot of room in this blaster. Usually blaster replicas, isn't a lot of room to begin with anyhow, especially metal ones, right? But there's not a lot of room to work with in here. So I was already working against, there goes my GoPro camera. I was already working against the grain because of the space requirements and the limited space inside of the hilt, right? So I had to figure out a few things. I had to make a few compromises, and yeah, I'm happy with the result, right? So we are going to come into Fusion. We will talk about this chassis really quickly, and then we will come up top and do a quick demo, and then we will be on our way, right? So let's come into Fusion. All right, so here it is. This is the chassis system for the Jin Erso replica blaster from me, Tim, Tierfon Orbital. All right. So one of the things that I had to start off with was a magazine to base this chassis off, right? The blaster, let me see if I have it. Yeah, I do. The airsoft gun comes with a magazine. This is the CO2 holder as well as the airsoft pellet holder. I've never done airsoft before, so I'm like, please don't be mad at me if I'm incorrectly naming these parts. But it came with a magazine, so I could already start with the basic dimensions of how the magazine would fit in the gun. One of the things that was the most difficult for the build was these channels. These channels, let me get a side on view here. These channels are very specific to this gun. So it couldn't just be a flat wall. Otherwise, the magazine would not even slide in. It would catch on the side of the internal body of the pistol. So I went through, over a dozen test prints of just this chassis alone to make sure that it fit in the hilt. Because one of the things that I really I wanted a removable magazine, but I also wanted it to be able to just drop out of the gun. I mean, that's the most satisfying part of reloading a weapon. Even though we don't see that in the film, we rarely see anyone reloading a blaster by removing the magazine. However, I will say, the first episode of Skeleton Crew, we do see that, which I thought was really cool. But we don't ever see that, really, ever. We don't see people reloading blasters, and we don't ever see them removing a magazine. That's not in universe, but it is now. But anyway, so that's one of the things that I wanted to achieve with this build. The other thing, I mean, as you will notice, so I went about designing my chassis, finally found a print or a design that worked. Then I had to clamshell it. Like I had to cut it in half. But then I had to figure out, okay, so how are these two parts going to marry together? So I knew that I wanted to print these in aluminum. I wanted the magazine to be metal, right? It would give it some weight. It would make it feel real. So the two parts clamshell together with two screws. So there's a post here and a post here. I cannot thread these from the factory. I could probably tap and drill these, but instead I chose to go with those heat sink brass inserts. We commonly see those actually in crystal chambers sometimes. It's like a crystal chamber greebly where we use them with all thread. So those are epoxied in place here, and then the two parts screw together with two Phillips head, screws. Okay. The Proffieboard does lay down into this chamber. Now, initially I wanted to have like a little tiny baby Proffieboard chassis to kind of help protect it. And this just did not work with space. So these really shouldn't be in here. The Proffieboard lays in this compartment. The whole compartment down here is isolated. I've got a lot of Captain tape at the bottom here, and then a layer of electrical tape just to make sure we don't get any accidental shorts or anything. But the Proffieboard lays in here, and you can access the SD card as well as the USB port through this slot. Now, on top of that is a very, very small 3.7 volt lipo battery. That is the only way I would have been able to do this particular build, is by going with a lipo battery. And I'm fine with that. It is, I mean, obviously we're used to having a huge like 15 milliamp hour or 15 amp, 3200 or 3000 milliamp hour battery in our builds. But that's really for, NeoPixel blades, to power a huge NeoPixel blades. They're very amp heavy. With this build, there's just two very small NeoPixel strips, and they're not drawing a lot of amps. So I could get away with a smaller battery. It does not have as much runtime as a huge 18650, obviously, but I'm fine with that. Another thing that I've done with this build for the first time is rely on the onboard charging port for the Proffie V3. Proffie V3 has charge capability. So if your battery is wired correctly, you can charge your battery through this USB port. It's a trickle charge. It takes a lot longer, but it is possible. In previous builds, I've done a JST connector to the battery. You can take this whole thing off. You unplug the JST connector, plug that into an external battery charger, and that was fine too. But it was just a lot of like taking parts off, unplugging cables, plugging cables back in. To avoid that, to avoid a potential for like breaking a wire or anything, you can just charge through the USB port. And again, it takes a little bit longer, but again, I'm fine with that. There is a kill switch here, okay, and a 22 millimeter speaker. I was really, really happy that I was able to get this fit, or make this fit into this build. The 22 millimeter speakers from Smuggler's Outpost sound great. And I really wanted a good sized speaker in this build. So that is where the speaker is. And then making our way up, there is a holder for some pogo pins. So there's a pogo pin connection to the upper part of that secondary PCB that lives inside of the body of the gun. Okay. The other really difficult thing that I had to do so many test prints for with this build was this damn notch right here. I wanted to make sure that the magazine clicked into place and is secured correctly. But man, and this is the only way that is achieved, right? Because on the inside of the magazine compartment, there is a latch where this will grab the magazine. If it's too low, the magazine will flop around. If it's too high, it won't even engage. So there are so many moving parts I've got it with, like fitment wise, that I've got to make sure everything is just so. So all of these pogo pins make a connection. So this magazine is, secure and not rattling around. So there was a lot of just test printing that went on with this build. And then of course I've got a Rebel logo on the magazine. This is not film accurate. I just put that on there because it was cool. It looked neat. Okay. So that's it. Let's come up top, talk about this guy. All right, so here it is. The A180 Gen Erso blaster, right? Really, really love the way that this came out, right? So there's that magazine. Just kind of drops out of the hilt, drops out of the blaster. 22 millimeter speaker from Smuggler's Outpost here. Here's that kill switch. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Put the magazine in the hilt. And we are ready to go, okay? So another thing that I did different with this build was I actually cut the barrel. So I sawzawed the barrel off and designed a translucent. Then I designed a barrel in Fusion and printed it in translucent resin. So we can kind of see it through these holes. Inside of that barrel are my two 2020 NeoPixel strips. I've got one facing this way and one facing this way. There's only 15 of them, I believe. Right? So you can see that barrel a little bit better. Okay. So to change modes on this blaster, you utilize the safety. Okay, so you can kind of feel as you push that button down, there is a tactile button in here that will change modes. Okay. Okay. So I am out of ammo now. When you hear that, I'm out of ammo. To reload, you want to hold down that toggle switch and it will reload. Okay. To scroll through your fonts, you want to long press and release. Whoops. Long press and release.
Key religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster.
And there we are at Hans blaster. Okay. And now I'm out. To reload, hold down. Okay. And that's it. Very simple setup. Let's come down to the bottom. So there it is. Hopefully it's in focus. I'm going to turn the light off here. There we go. Mag just drops right out. Let's go back to Jin.
This is a rebellion, isn't it?
And then I'm out again. So let's reload. And that's it. One more.
Key religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Anyway, so that's it. That's the Jin Erso blaster. From Armorer Works, installed with a removable magazine chassis. Very cool. Anyhow, to the customer for this order, because this was purchased on my website. Thank you very much for your patience. I cannot thank you enough for those of you who place orders for me or through me or for me or with me. Thank you very much for your patience. These take a long time. I've got to order them. They come from Asia. It takes almost a month for them to get here. Then I've got to order the magazine parts. So these are really, they're very time consuming, right? So anyhow, thank you very much for your patience. If anyone has any questions about this particular build or anything really, there has been another slot opened up on my website if anyone is interested. Other than that, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Thank you for watching, everyone. With that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.